The rejection happened before she even realized that she had been rejected. The chair across from her stayed empty. The minutes kept passing, and the silence said everything the man never bothered to explain. Rachel Miller sat alone at a small round table near the window of a historic restaurant in downtown Boston, the kind of place people reserved weeks in advance for Christmas. Candlelight shimmered across polished silverware, and soft carols drifted through the air like a promise meant for someone else. Outside, snow pressed gently against the glass, turning the street into a glowing postcard. Inside, Rachel felt invisible. She wore a deep navy dress that fit her perfectly elegant without trying too hard. Her hair was brushed back neatly, her makeup understated. She looked like a woman who belonged there. Yet her fingers twisted the linen napkin again and again, a quiet habit she could never break when anxiety crept in. She had checked her phone too many times already. No missed calls, no messages, no apology, just silence. The blind date had been arranged by her best friend, someone who swore this man was different, kind, successful, serious about commitment. Rachel had almost said no. She always did at first. Hope for her had become a dangerous thing. But something about Christmas had softened her resolve. She told herself that maybe this year would end differently. It did not. As the waiter passed by for the third time, his polite smile strained. Rachel nodded and said she was still waiting. The lie tasted bitter. Around her, laughter spilled freely. Couples leaned toward each other, hands intertwined. Families clinked glasses and shared plates, their warmth filling every corner of the room. Rachel felt like an ornament placed on the wrong tree. Decorative, out of place, easy to overlook. She lowered her gaze, pretending to admire the candle flame while her chest tightened. The familiar thought crept in, quiet but sharp. Maybe she really was the kind of woman men chose only when nothing better came along. Reliable. Nice. Never enough to stay. Then she heard it. A soft giggle. Light footsteps. Rachel looked up. Two little girls stood beside her table, no taller than her waist, dressed in matching red velvet dresses trimmed with white lace. One clutched a worn teddy bear with a crooked bow. The other stared at Rachel with open curiosity, her head tilted slightly, as if studying a painting. Their blonde hair was neatly tied with small green ribbons, their cheeks flushed pink from the cold. They looked unreal, like something pulled straight from a Christmas advertisement. Rachel blinked, startled, then smiled gently. "Hello?" she said, her voice instinctively soft. The girls did not answer right away. They exchanged a look, silent communication passing between them. The one holding the teddy bear stepped closer, her small fingers brushing the edge of the tablecloth. The other reached out and tugged lightly at Rachel's sleeve. Rachel froze. The girl with the teddy bear finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, sweet and steady all at once. "Will you be our mom for a moment?" The restaurant disappeared. Rachel's heart slammed so hard she felt dizzy. She stared at them, certain she had misheard. Surely she had. Children said strange things, but not this. Not to a stranger, not like that. She glanced around quickly, panic rising, searching for an adult rushing over to apologize. That was when she saw him. He stood several steps away, watching with an expression that held both alarm and resignation. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark wool coat that looked too heavy for the room. His hair was neatly trimmed, though exhaustion softened his features. His eyes, a deep gray, carried something heavier than embarrassment. Grief, maybe, or guilt, or a hope he was afraid to name. He stepped forward, lifting his hand slightly in surrender. "I am so sorry," he said, his voice low, controlled. "They should not have said that. I did not teach them to say that." Rachel swallowed. "They are your daughters?" He nodded. "Yes, I am, Andrew." The girls immediately turned toward him unfazed. "Daddy," one said simply, as if the explanation was obvious. Andrew sighed softly, rubbing the back of his neck. "They mean well," he added. "They just speak their hearts." Rachel looked back at the twins, at their hopeful eyes, and something inside her shifted. She had come to this restaurant feeling unwanted, forgotten, dismissed without a word. And now 2 children she had never met were looking at her like she was the answer to something they had been missing. She did not know it yet, but the empty chair across from her had not been meant for a date at all. It had been waiting for something far more unexpected. Andrew moved quickly, placing a gentle hand on each girl's shoulder, his expression tight with embarrassment. He apologized again, explaining that they had lost their mother years ago, and sometimes said things without understanding the weight of their words. His voice was calm, practiced, like someone used to smoothing over uncomfortable moments, yet Rachel sensed the strain beneath it. The girls, however, showed no sign of regret. They watched Rachel closely, as if waiting for an answer that mattered more than any apology their father could give. Rachel knelt slightly, so she was closer to their eye level, her pulse still racing. She asked their names, her voice warm despite the confusion swirling inside her. Lily held her teddy bear tighter and smiled shyly, while Lucy answered for both of them, proud and clear. When Rachel asked why they would ask something like that, Lucy tilted her head and said their dad had been sad for a long time, that he barely smiled anymore, and that he kept saying Christmas did not feel like Christmas. Lily added that they wanted someone kind, someone who looked lonely like them sometimes. The words struck deeper than Rachel expected. She straightened slowly, her gaze drifting back to Andrew. For the briefest moment, his composure cracked. His eyes dropped to the floor, as if the truth spoken by his daughters had exposed something he worked hard to hide. He said nothing, but Rachel saw it clearly now. This was not just a tired single father. This was a man carrying grief like a second spine, holding himself upright through sheer will. Andrew gently guided the twins back a step, thanking Rachel for her patience and preparing to leave. He explained they had only come in to ask about a table, hoping to give the girls a small Christmas dinner, but the restaurant was nearly full. His tone was polite, distant, already retreating. Rachel felt an unexpected pang as she watched them turn away. Minutes earlier, she had been abandoned without explanation. Now the first people to notice her tonight were leaving too. Before she could stop herself, Rachel spoke. She asked if they had eaten yet. Andrew hesitated, surprised, then admitted they had not. The girls turned back instantly, eyes lighting up with hope that felt almost unfair. Rachel glanced at the empty chair across from her, the one meant for a man who never came, and made a decision that felt reckless and right at the same time. She told them they could sit with her if they wanted. The relief on the girls' faces was immediate. Andrew hesitated only a second longer before nodding gratitude flickering across his features. As the waiter brought extra chairs, the twins climbed in as if they belonged there, their energy filling the space the silence had claimed. Lily introduced her teddy bear as Snowball, insisting he always sat at the table. Lucy began talking about Christmas lights, cookies, and how snow made everything look nicer, even sad houses. Rachel laughed, surprised by the sound of it. It felt unfamiliar, like a door opening in a room she had kept locked for years. Andrew sat across from her, quiet, at first watching his daughters with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. He thanked Rachel again, this time more softly, as if afraid she might change her mind. She waved it off, saying she did not mind at all. She did not mention the blind date, the empty chair, or the sting still lingering in her chest. Some disappointments felt too small, now shrinking under the weight of something warmer unfolding. As menus were opened and the girls debated loudly over dessert before dinner, Rachel felt the loneliness loosen its grip. She did not know these people. She owed them nothing. Yet sitting there between laughter and shared glances, she felt something she had not felt all evening. Not rejection, not regret, but the quiet sense that maybe the night was not finished with her yet. Dinner unfolded gently like something fragile no one wanted to rush. The twins spoke with the fearless honesty only children possessed, jumping from stories about school to complaints about broccoli to their strong belief that snow made people nicer. Rachel listened, smiling, responding when invited, careful not to intrude too deeply. Across the table, Andrew remained mostly quiet, answering when spoken to, his posture slightly rigid, as if he were a guest in his own life. Yet every so often his eyes softened when one of the girls laughed, and Rachel noticed how his shoulders lowered just a fraction, as though the noise itself was easing a weight he had carried all day. Halfway through the meal, Lucy mentioned their mother as casually as if she were talking about a favorite movie. She said their mom used to sing while cooking and always burned the cookies, but laughed anyway. Lily added that Mommy lived in heaven now, right above the stars, because good people went high. The table fell silent. Rachel felt her breath catch the words, settling slowly, painfully. Andrew's hand tightened around his forked knuckles, whitening before he forced himself to relax. He murmured an apology, his voice barely audible, explaining that the girls did not always realize when certain things made adults uncomfortable. Rachel reached across the table before she fully thought it through. Her hand rested lightly near Andrew's, not touching, but close enough to be felt. She told him there was nothing to apologize for, that children spoke truths adults were too afraid to voice. The twins nodded, seriously satisfied with that explanation. Andrew looked at Rachel, then really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. For the first time, she saw gratitude, unguarded by politeness, relief, unfiltered by pride. It was the look of someone who had been bracing for judgment and found understanding instead. The girls returned to their stories, reenacting the disaster of decorating a Christmas tree without supervision, complete with a broken ornament and a near fall that made Andrew exhale sharply even now. Rachel laughed until her eyes watered, surprised at how natural it felt. She realized Andrew was watching her not with suspicion, but with quiet wonder, as if trying to place her in a memory that had faded but not disappeared. He admitted softly that the house had been too quiet since his wife passed, that laughter felt foreign, almost dangerous, because it reminded him of what was gone. Rachel listened without interrupting, her heart aching for him. She recognized the same emptiness in his words that lived in her own chest, shaped differently, but cut from the same absence. She shared just briefly that she had spent many holidays alone, convincing herself she preferred independence, when in truth, she was simply tired of being disappointed. Andrew nodded, understanding more than he said. Two strangers bound not by history but by loss sat across from each other, while the twins unknowingly stitched something fragile and new between them. By the time dessert arrived, the heaviness had softened into something quieter, almost hopeful. The girls insisted Rachel try their favorite hot chocolate, piling marshmallows into her cup with ceremonial seriousness. She agreed, laughing, and accepted the mug with both hands. Andrew leaned back, watching the three of them, a warmth rising in his chest that frightened him with its familiarity. He had not planned for this night. He had expected survival, not connection. Yet, as he looked at Rachel surrounded by his daughter's joy, he felt something stir that he thought grief had erased. And for the first time in years, the future did not feel like something to endure, but something that might one day be lived. When the plates were cleared and the last traces of chocolate clung to the rims of their cups, Lucy slid off her chair and tugged gently at Rachel's hand. She asked with the confidence of someone asking for something already promised if Rachel would come with them to see the big Christmas tree in the city square. The question hovered in the air, innocent and dangerous all at once. Rachel hesitated, feeling the invisible line between kindness and intrusion. Across from her, Andrew met her eyes, uncertainty written plainly across his face, as if he too was waiting to see whether this night would keep unfolding or quietly end. Andrew cleared his throat and said the girls had been talking about the tree all week, that it meant a lot to them. He added quickly that there was no pressure, that he understood if Rachel preferred to go home. The words were polite, but his voice carried something else beneath them, a hope he tried to bury before it could embarrass him. Rachel glanced toward the window where snow had begun to fall again, soft and steady. She thought of the empty apartment waiting for her, of the silence that would greet her if she left now. She smiled and said yes, surprising herself with how easily the answer came. Outside, the cold wrapped around them, immediately sharp but clean. The city square glowed a short walk away, lights strung across trees and storefronts like constellations brought down to earth. The twins skipped ahead, their laughter echoing off the brick buildings, while Rachel walked beside Andrew at an easy distance. He did not rush her. He did not crowd her. He matched her pace, as if instinctively aware that some moments needed space to breathe. Snow crunched beneath their steps, and for a while, none of them spoke. As they reached the square, the enormous Christmas tree rose before them, taller than Rachel had imagined, its lights pulsing softly in shades of gold and white. The twins gasped, spinning in circles, their faces lit with pure wonder. They pulled Rachel forward, insisting she stand between them, one small hand in each of hers. The warmth of their grip startled her. It felt grounding, undeniable. Andrew watched from a step back, something tight, loosening in his chest as he took in the sight. For a fleeting moment, it looked like a family. The thought unsettled him as much as it comforted him. Andrew finally spoke, his voice low, steady, as if he had been rehearsing the words for years. He told Rachel about his wife, how she had loved Christmas more than anything, how she filled their home with music and traditions and noise. He admitted that after she died, the holiday became unbearable, a reminder of everything missing. He said raising the twins alone felt like carrying a mountain on his back every day, a careful balance between strength and collapse. Rachel listened without interrupting, her chest tightening with every sentence, recognizing the weight of his honesty. When he fell silent, Rachel surprised herself by answering with her own truth. She told him she had always been the dependable one, the woman people trusted but never chose. She spoke of relationships that faded quietly, of holidays spent convincing herself she preferred solitude, when it was really loneliness in disguise. Andrew did not offer solutions or platitudes. He simply listened, his gaze steady, respectful, as if her words mattered as much as his own. In that quiet exchange, something rare formed, an understanding born not from similarity, but from shared endurance. The twins returned breathless, insisting on photos and hot cider, and one more look at the lights. As they laughed and tugged Rachel back toward the tree, Andrew walked beside her closer, now his arm brushing hers once then again. Neither pulled away. The night felt suspended, fragile and bright, as though time itself had decided to slow. Rachel felt a warmth spread through her chest, not loud or overwhelming, but steady. She did not know what tomorrow would bring. She only knew that the woman who had arrived alone for dinner no longer felt alone at all, and that this unexpected night had begun to rewrite something deep inside her, something she had long believed was already finished. The walk back to the restaurant parking lot was quieter, the kind of silence that did not ask to be filled. Snow drifted down in slow, deliberate flakes, softening the edges of the city until everything felt muted and close. The twins stayed between Rachel and Andrew, their small hands swinging their steps, light with exhaustion and happiness. When they reached the cars, the girls stopped abruptly and turned to Rachel, their smiles fading into something more serious, more vulnerable. Lily hugged her first arms, tight, her cheek pressed firmly against Rachel's coat, as if letting go might undo the night entirely. Lucy followed, wrapping herself around Rachel's waist and whispering that she hoped Rachel would come back again. The words landed gently, but carried weight. Rachel swallowed, her throat tightening as she knelt to their level, and promised she would try. She did not know what she meant by it, only that the promise felt necessary, honest, in the moment it was given. Andrew watched his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his expression unreadable. He thanked her quietly, telling her she had given the girls something precious, a Christmas memory he had been afraid he could no longer provide. Rachel stood as the twins climbed into the back seat, still waving until Andrew closed the door. The two adults lingered beside the car, neither quite ready to leave. Andrew said he did not want to overstep, that tonight had already been more than he expected. Rachel nodded, understanding the careful distance in his words. They exchanged a final look, heavy with things unsaid, before Andrew drove away. The twins' faces pressed to the window until the car disappeared into the snowy street. Rachel remained there longer than she intended, the cold seeping through her shoes, her thoughts tangled and restless. When she finally returned to her apartment, the silence greeted her, as it always did. But it felt different now. Less empty, more reflective. She slept lightly, waking just before dawn with a strange ache in her chest, not pain but longing. Images from the night replayed without invitation, the twins' laughter, Andrew's quiet honesty, the warmth of small hands in hers beneath the Christmas lights. The next day passed slowly. Rachel moved through it, distracted her work, untouched, her tea gone cold beside her. She told herself it had been a coincidence, a fleeting kindness between strangers brought together by timing and snow. Yet she found herself glancing at her phone more often than necessary, waiting for a message she had no right to expect. By evening, she had nearly convinced herself to let the memory settle into something distant and safe, when she noticed a small envelope tucked beneath her door. Inside was a Christmas card, handmade and unmistakable. Crayon lines formed uneven hearts and stick figures, two small girls holding hands beside a woman with long hair. The writing was clumsy but earnest, asking if Rachel would come see them again soon. Beneath the card was a phone number, written carefully, as if rewritten until it felt right. Rachel did not hesitate. She dialed immediately, her pulse quickening as the line rang. Andrew answered, his voice cautious at first, then softening with relief when he heard hers. He admitted the girls had insisted on the card, that they had spent the morning talking about Rachel, as if she were already part of their lives. He confessed he had been afraid to call, unsure if he would be intruding. Rachel smiled, warmth spreading through her chest, and told him she would like to see them again. They agreed to meet at a small Christmas market that weekend, something simple, no expectations. When Saturday came, the twins ran into Rachel's arms as if no time had passed at all. Andrew followed behind, carrying hot drinks, his smile easier now, less guarded. They walked together through rows of lit stalls, sampling sweets, admiring ornaments, sharing quiet laughter. At one booth, the girls insisted on buying Rachel a small wooden angel, declaring it belonged with her. She accepted it, her eyes stinging, realizing that this was no longer just a memory forming. It was something growing steady and real, asking not to be rushed, only to be allowed. Weeks passed with a quiet consistency that surprised all of them. What began as a single afternoon at a Christmas market slowly unfolded into a rhythm unannounced but unmistakable. Rachel started stopping by Andrew's house once or twice a week, sometimes to bring cookies. The twins helped her bake sometimes, just to sit at the kitchen table while they colored and argued over crayons. The house, once orderly but hollow, began to carry new sounds. Laughter lingered in corners that had long held only echoes, and even Andrew noticed that the air felt warmer, as if something unseen had been switched back on. The twins grew attached quickly, without hesitation or doubt. They pulled Rachel into bedtime routines, insisting she read their favorite stories, and helped them tuck in Snowball the teddy bear, that had somehow become a permanent guest in every room. Rachel complied, easily moved by how naturally the role fit her, how little resistance her heart offered. Andrew watched from the doorway, more often than he admitted, struck by the way his daughters relaxed around her, how their voices softened, how their sleep came easier on nights she stayed late. Andrew himself changed more slowly. He remained cautious, aware of the fragile balance he was responsible for protecting. But little by little he found himself talking more, sharing details he had kept buried. He spoke of the early days after his wife's death, of the fear that he would fail his daughters, of nights spent awake listening for their breathing just to be sure he had not lost anything else. Rachel listened without trying to fix him, without turning his grief into something smaller or easier than it was. Her presence did not erase his pain, but it made it feel survivable. One evening in late January, snow fell again, thick and steady, coating the streets in silence. Rachel joined them for dinner, bringing a simple casserole and an apologetic smile. The twins had insisted on dressing up, pulling on their red velvet dresses as if it were still Christmas. They whispered and giggled throughout the meal, exchanging looks that made Andrew suspicious. Rachel noticed it too, but said nothing, content to enjoy the warmth of the room, the low hum of conversation, the sense of belonging she no longer questioned. After dinner, the twins disappeared into their bedroom and returned carrying a small wrapped box, their faces glowing with anticipation. They handed it to Rachel together, urging her to open it quickly. Inside was a simple locket, silver and worn with two tiny photographs tucked inside. The twins' faces stared back at her, smiling. Rachel covered her mouth, overwhelmed the weight of the gesture pressing into her chest. She knelt down, hugging them both tightly, her voice failing her completely. Andrew stepped closer, his hands trembling slightly. He explained that the girls wanted her to have it because she made them feel safe, because the house felt happier when she was there. His voice faltered on the last word. Rachel looked up at him, tears in her eyes, and in that moment, the careful distance he had maintained finally dissolved. He offered his hand, helping her stand, and did not let go right away. With a breath that felt like surrender, Andrew admitted what he had been carrying since Christmas. He told her that meeting her had been the miracle he never believed he deserved, that she had brought warmth back into their lives without asking for anything in return. Rachel felt her tears fall freely now, not from a sadness, but from relief. She told him she felt the same, that somewhere between laughter and quiet moments, her loneliness had loosened its grip. The twins cheered, wrapping their arms around them both, and in that shared embrace, something irrevocable settled into place. They had not been searching for a family, yet somehow one had found them. From that night on, nothing felt rushed, yet nothing felt uncertain either. Their lives continued in the ordinary ways that once felt heavy, but now carried a different weight. Rachel became a steady presence, not as a guest, not as a replacement, but as someone who chose to stay. She learned the small rhythms of the house, the way Lily liked her stories slow and soft, the way Lucy needed an extra minute of reassurance before sleep. Andrew watched this unfold with quiet awe, realizing that love did not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it settled in gentle and persistent. Andrew and Rachel spoke often after the twins were asleep, sitting at opposite ends of the couch, at first, then gradually closer. They talked about fears, about boundaries, about the responsibility of blending lives shaped by loss. Andrew admitted he had been afraid of hope, afraid of wanting something he could not protect. Rachel confessed she had spent years shrinking herself to avoid disappointment. Together, they made a silent agreement to move carefully, not because they doubted each other, but because what they were building mattered. The twins, unaware of caution, declared their own conclusions. They began introducing Rachel as family, correcting anyone who questioned her presence. Their certainty was unwavering, born from instinct rather than logic. Rachel never corrected them. Instead, she focused on being worthy of their trust, showing up consistently, listening, fully offering comfort without condition. In doing so, she found herself healing in ways she had never expected. The woman who once measured her worth by who stayed was learning to measure it by who she cared for. Andrew noticed the change in himself as well. He laughed more easily. He slept more deeply. The constant tension in his shoulders began to ease. He stopped thinking of the future as something to survive and started imagining it as something that could hold joy. He saw Rachel not as a risk, but as a partner, someone who understood that love was not the absence of pain, but the courage to live with it honestly. One quiet afternoon, as snow melted into slush along the sidewalks, Andrew watched Rachel and the twins baking together, flour dusting their hair and clothes. The scene struck him with unexpected clarity. This was not a replacement for what had been lost. It was something new, shaped by choice and care. And in that realization, Andrew felt gratitude rather than guilt. The past no longer felt like a chain holding him back, but a foundation from which something stronger could grow. The next Christmas arrived without announcement, slipping quietly into their lives like a promise kept. Snow fell over the city in steady silence, softening corners and muting old echoes. Inside Andrew's home, a tree stood near the window, uneven and imperfect, dressed with handmade ornaments, mismatched lights, and memories that were still learning how to exist. Rachel moved through the room with calm familiarity, no longer wondering where to stand or what role she played. Lily and Lucy stayed close, orbiting her with easy certainty, their laughter warming the space in ways heat never could. Andrew paused at the doorway, watching the scene with a stillness that felt sacred. For the first time since his wife's passing, he felt no tension between past and present. What stood before him was not a replacement for what had been lost, nor an attempt to rewrite history. It was something built deliberately, shaped by patience, courage, and the willingness to remain open when fear insisted on retreat. He understood then that love had not returned by accident. It had returned because they allowed it to. As evening settled, the twins proudly retold the story they loved most, how they met Rachel on a Christmas night when she looked lonely and brave at the same time. They described it like a discovery, as if they had found something precious waiting quietly to be seen. Rachel listened with a gentle smile, remembering the woman she had been that night, convinced she was invisible. Now she was known completely, not for perfection, but for presence, for choosing kindness when no one expected anything from her. When the girls finally drifted to sleep, the house grew quiet, the kind of quiet that felt full rather than empty. Rachel and Andrew sat together near the tree, the soft glow reflecting in the glass and across their hands as they intertwined naturally. Andrew spoke then, his voice steady, certain. He told her that their family had not been created by chance or rescued by fate, but formed through choice, through showing up again and again, even when uncertainty remained. Rachel leaned against him, understanding without needing more words. Love, she realized, was not about being chosen first. It was about being chosen with intention. In the years that followed, the story became tradition. Every Christmas, the twins told anyone who would listen that they found their mother on a night filled with snow lights and quiet miracles. Rachel would stand beside Andrew, listening, her heart steady and full. She always remembered the empty chair, the silent restaurant, the moment rejection had cleared space for something far greater. What began as a lonely evening became the foundation of a home, imperfect, resilient, and real. A life shaped not by what was lost, but by what was bravely claimed. It endured through ordinary days, quiet mornings, shared responsibilities, and unspoken promises, proving that love, once welcomed, could grow stronger, not by perfection, but by honesty, patience, and mutual choice, together always. From a deeper psychological perspective, this story is not simply about romance or Christmas magic. It is about timing, emotional readiness, and the quiet power of human connection. Rachel was not saved by love. She was healed by being seen. Andrew did not replace what he lost. He chose to build something new with honesty and patience. And the twins reminded us of a truth adults often forget. The heart knows what it needs long before logic does. Family does not always begin with vows or bloodlines. Sometimes it begins with kindness, with a single choice to stay when walking away feels easier. And sometimes the most meaningful turning points arrive disguised as rejection. If this story moved, you take a moment to like and subscribe. More stories like this are waiting to be told. And tell us in the comments, using just 2 words, Christmas miracle.